This is Doofy McButterscotch, and we have returned to Tommy Lee Jones. Let's see, we left off with Double Jeopardy, so now, Under Siege. This is mainly a Steven Seagal film, and Tommy Lee Jones is the villain. And this is a very different role from what he usually does. He's usually the tough Texan type, but in this one, he's kind of more of a 90s hipster, which is kind of weird for Tommy Lee Jones, but this was early in his career when this one happened. The same thing in JFK. He actually played a gay guy, which was super weird once you've seen Men in Black and like all the other films that he's been in. It's super strange seeing him in those roles because they do not suit him at all. I mean, a lot of his early roles just don't fit Tommy Lee Jones whatsoever, and it's kind of weird seeing those. It'd be like seeing Clint Eastwood playing like a pussy or something like that. It just wouldn't make any sense. Or Chuck Norris as a weakling or something like that. It's just weird to see some of those films. But JFK is a lot weirder to see Tommy Lee Jones in than Under Siege. It's out of character, but it's the usual 90s thing. It's set on a boat, so siege on a boat, but it's decent. You can get through it. It's just weird once you've established who Tommy Lee Jones is, and then you watch this. Space Cowboys. We did that with Clint Eastwood, so we don't gotta do that one. Volcano. Now this one's a really good action movie, all about a volcano, of course, and it erupts, and it's kind of like Dante's Peak, which was a Pierce Brosnan movie I reviewed earlier in this series, and it's kind of the same thing like that, except I think there might be a little bit more damage. But instead of Pierce Brosnan, insert Tommy Lee Jones. So it's still a pretty good concept for a movie. I'm not sure which one of those came first. I could flip the page, but I think I'll just kind of leave it there. It's pretty good. The Client. This one's, let's see, it's more of an action thing. It's got maybe Susan Sarandon. Yeah, it does have Susan Sarandon. She's in it, and it's one of those things where people are trying to find out who killed who and that sort of thing. But it's got Tommy Lee Jones in it, so it made it a lot more watchable than usual, and I've forgotten about it, so it's not the most memorable film, but it's still good because it's got Tommy Lee Jones. So that's all his movies. So what do I think of Tommy Lee Jones? Well, I keep on complimenting him after every single movie, so of course I like the guy. He's just got a very likable personality. It's just real interesting. I mean, some people you can't really get by. Like, sometimes you can just look at a face and you can be like, that guy is super cool. Like Tommy Lee Jones, he's got that face. Like, you see him and he's like, that guy's awesome. And then you see someone like Justin Bieber and you're like, that guy's a fucking prick. I hope he gets hit by a bus. That sort of thing. Sometimes you're born with the face that defines you. And Tommy Lee Jones has got that face. And most of his movies are good. His earlier stuff is kind of shitty because his career kind of took a little while to get a kickstart on. But his later stuff is really good, and it's a shame that he's not doing as many movies these days, but oh well, we all have our primes and stuff, but I think he's good. Now we're going to flip the page. Oh, we have not flipped the page for ages. Goodness gracious, so many new actors. Oh goodness, let's just do a little review of all of them right now. Let's see who's all on here. Well, we are going to start with Jack Lemmon. Well, we've done JFK. JFK is a really popular film on this list. There's actually 7 people on this list that starred in JFK. So out of all of the movies in this book, JFK I put the most X's down after I completed that film. I put down like 7 or 6 or something like that. It was a ridiculous amount of number. But out of all of them, it wasn't the greatest movie, but sure did have a lot of characters in it. Anyway, I already did that. Grumpier Old Men. Let's see. Should I start with the one after or before? I'm going to break the code and I'm going to skip Grumpier Old Men and do Grumpy Old Men first, then Grumpier Old Men. Even though it's kind of skipping over, but who gives a shit? Grumpy Old Men. Well, it's got Jack Lemmon and it's got Walter Matthau. And they star in a lot of movies together, and in Grumpy Old Men, both of them are frenemies. They've known each other for a really long time, and they both get on each other's nerves a lot. And then they bring in some really attractive older lady who's Anne Margaret, and she's pretty attractive for an older lady, and they both fight over her, and Jack Lemmon eventually wins her over. And of course they have a lot of gags and stuff, a lot of collaborations. They've got Rocky's old trainer in there too, so that's pretty good. But don't feel too bad about Walter Matthau, because in Grumpier Old Men, another attractive older lady comes onto the scene, and I am forgetting her name at the moment, but she's equally as attractive as Anne Margaret and Sophia Loren. So she comes in, so you don't have to feel bad about Walter Matthau, because he gets a broad too, and they have gags in that one too. They're both okay-ish movies. They're not laugh out loud hilarious. They're kind of a little outdated. Their comedy was meant for like 60s and 70s audiences, and it's kind of more cool to see them in a film together in like the 90s, more than it being a funny film. But anyway, that's Grumpy and Grumpier Old Men. The Odd Couple. This is yet another movie with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau in it. And it's a lot older. It was made in 1968. And this is more of a... I personally think this one's better than the Grumpy Old Men series. It's... Of course, they're not old in that one. They're about middle-aged. They're in their 40s in this one. And they're just like renting an apartment together, and it's kind of the same as Grumpy Old Men, because they don't always get along. There's a lot of shit that goes down, and it's not always good. And they've got some laughs here and there, so it's a decent movie. Airport 77. Now this one has no Walter Matthau in sight, so this is the first purely Jack Lemmon film, because they were also in JFK together. Airport 77 is from the Airport series, and it's about a hijacking that turns into a crash. So basically it leads up to these people hijacking a plane, and then the hijackers fuck up and the whole plane goes down, and they're trying to figure out how to save themselves. And eventually the hijackers are like, oh well, we sure fucked up, but we're gonna all have to stick together if we want to get the hell off of this island or wherever they landed. And they eventually all figure it out, and I think some people die here and there, but I think it's mostly one of those crash stories that gets better as it goes along. Out to Sea. Now, this is another one with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, and I actually just saw this one recently, so it's fresh in my mind. It's kind of the same as Grumpy Old Men, but it's a little bit different, because they are on a cruise ship. Jack Lemmon didn't really want to go there because his wife has recently died, and he doesn't want to do that sort of thing, but Walter Matthau is kind of that one friend who tricks you into doing things. He says, oh, it's free, and it turns out it's not free. Oh no, the time's running out. I'm going to have to review it later. See ya.